Okay, well, it is 11:33 our time, so let's get started. Well, welcome everyone. This session is about gamifying your class and engaging your students online. My name is Mai Trinh. I'm an assistant professor in leadership and interdisciplinary studies at Arizona State University. When I was a doctoral student, I was trained to do experiential learning. And so doing this with a lot of in-person classes, activities, and the exercises that we are used to in OB and management classes. So in the past 5 years, when I transitioned into teaching exclusively online, it has been an adventure to really figure out how do experiential learning work in online context, and how can I engage my students to have that same level of kind of fun and excitement and curiosity that we see when we often do these exercises in person. So today I'm going to tell you about my adventure, and hopefully you'll take away some tips from this session to enrich your own class, whether that is in person, hybrid, or online. And then I'll let Rachel introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a master's student of organizational leadership at ASU, Arizona State University, and I have never taken any kind of math class that was at a college level until I got into master's class. And then it was really refreshing because it was terrifying to take statistics. And then it was so fun taking Mai's class that I felt like, oh, okay, wait, no, I'm not learning statistics. I'm just going on an adventure. And that reduced my anxiety and allowed me to actually engage with the content in a really liberating way.
So throughout this presentation, you'll hear a lot of examples from that particular class. It's a master level statistics class that I developed, and Rachel was one of the first guinea pig in the program, taking the first offering of that class. So you'll actually hear from both the teacher's perspective as well as the student's perspective. Before we start, could you use the reaction button with the yes and no button to tell me what's your experience with game-based learning and gamification? How many people have used game-based learning using some kind of activities or exercises that are usually contained within a session or two? If you have, please just press the yes button. Okay. And has anyone used gamification? Gamification is different from game-based learning in the sense that it incorporates video games elements such as scoring, achievement, competition, goals, and usually is a lengthy process. It usually weaves through an entire class or a major section of an entire class instead of being confined to just one or two sessions. Great. Well, looks like we have a few people with experience with gamification. Jason and Louis, can I have the honor to hear from you about what kind of gamification you do in your class?
Sure. Sorry, I'm having bandwidth issues, so I'm going to keep my camera off. But one of the things that I've used successfully is badges throughout the semester to have different things that are rewarded if people are turning everything in on time, if people are coming to participate in different activities that we're doing. So for instance, there's a fishbowl activity that you can do a couple of times throughout the semester. And so people who do that get a badge. And so you can kind of see on Blackboard who has obtained what badges. And that's of course used then to calculate final grades, but it's also kind of a motivating system that encourages people to make sure that they're doing the things that are part of the course.
That's great. Thank you.
I have gamified all my OB and HR courses. So what I like is there's a narrative. They are in a consulting firm. They are trainees. newcomers when they start, and each experience in the course gives them experience points. So doing a test or a quiz or attending a class or winning a game-based activity inside the class gives them points. And also they have options. So they can choose the scholar path or the analyst path or the self-knowledge path. So there are activities related to doing tests in the scholar, or maybe the practitioner path. Also, they have to conduct a session. So they have the possibility to choose the activities that are more aligned with their interests. And also they have badges, and they can reach certain positions inside the organization. And they have also each week they receive the scorecard, so they get a sense of where they are doing in their grading possibilities.
Thank you so much. That sounds wonderful, and that sounds like really fun too, right?
Yes.
That's yeah. I also use a lot of those elements. So throughout this presentation, please feel free to chime in the chat if you have other ideas, suggestions, or even questions about anything that we talk about. I want to kind of also preface this up front that gamification may sound like a lot, but on the tech side of it, it's very minimal. It takes no more than clicking a few buttons on your LMS, being able to edit some pictures on PowerPoint. That's what I use. And you can really get fancy with it, but to get started is very, very low tech. So I want to just kind of say that up front. And of course, I'm happy to share all the tools that I use. And in this slide, you can actually also see the first kind of elements that we use in gamification, the avatar. So on the left is my own avatars. My hair used to be that way. And then on the right is Rachel's avatar, right? So creating a kind of a fun environment for students to start with is a good signal to them that, hey, this class is going to be different, right? And it's actually going to be really fun. So today, at the end of this PGW, we hope that you'll be able to differentiate between game-based learning and gamification, and how the exercises that we usually use are actually game-based learning and not quite gamification yet. I hope that you'll also be able to identify the main design principles, see what works for you, and then choose whatever will be easy to implement in your class to improve your class delivery, instruction, student engagement, and learning. The agenda for today is just divided mainly into two parts. The first part, I will talk about the gamification elements using my statistics class as an example. And then in the second half, we'll talk about experiential learning, learning styles, educator roles, what you need to do as an instructor in these kind of courses. And throughout this presentation, I want to challenge a few misconceptions that we have, right? First, experiential learning is totally easy to do in an online setting. And I'm talking even like asynchronous online setting. Second, in the literature, the literature has shown that technical courses like high-level math classes and STEMs don't really they are not as effective in an online environment compared to in-person. And I'm totally challenging that. In this class, I think my students learn really, really well. And this is, again, asynchronously online. And lastly, some people would think that this is a lot of work to do on the instructor's part. And I would say that, well, that's only partly true. It's a lot to set up. But once everything is set up and when the class actually starts, your workload as an instructor, I think, is lesser. It's a lot less compared to like a traditional lecture writing assignment kind of course. So please keep that in mind as we go along. So a little bit about my teaching philosophy and how I approach this class. I believe that people learn best when they have fun. They can apply what they are learning immediately into their context. They learn from making mistakes and from interactions with their peers. And I think the mistake and the fun parts are usually the kind of missing elements in a lot of online classes and higher education classes in general. I think we've trained our students so well to, perform well in tests, right? You cannot fail. And so they avoid mistake at all costs. And sometimes that is, not the best way to learn. So one theme that I built into this class is that, hey, it's okay to make mistakes. You can learn from your mistake and redo your tests and things like that. So a little bit background about the class, again, is a master level statistics class. These are, my students are apprehensive of statistics. I've been teaching stats since 2010, so for a long time, at various levels, undergrad, master's, PhD. No one comes to class and say, hey, I'm excited about statistics, please teach me something cool, right? They usually come there because they have to take the class. And sometimes I think the fear gets in the way of learning. The material itself is not that scary, but somehow it is just a huge monster in people's head. So the gamification kind of format really helped overcome that fear. I use a comic style textbook. As you can see here, Andy Field is a very respected author. With a system of weekly quests, competency badges, strategic decisions that people have to make as players in the game, right? I have a money and inventory system and item shops. So I will explain all of these as we move forward. And these are actually the tutorial of how to play this game that I share with my students as a course introduction. This is the homepage when you land into the course LMS. And again, my course is asynchronously online. So if I choose to, I never have to see my students. So the flip side of that is that some students can completely avoid me if they want to, right? So this is like, my main way of communicating with them, setting up an LMS that is different. And again, like this signal to them, hey, something is different here without even looking at anything else. Right, and then of course I introduced what each button means as we move on into the tutorial. First, I talked about the system of badges that we have. So I had 10 badges in total. 7 of them are competency based. So these are based on content of statistical concept that they need to learn in the textbook, right? And it's just a traditional test in Canvas. If they score 90% or above, they get a badge. I have 3 other badges that are based on things that I call side quests. So the competency badges are the main quest, and then 3 side quests. They can earn coins, they can earn discussion points, and they can earn battle points. And I'll explain that next. But the message that students get here is that their grade in the class is determined by the number of badges that they earn, not the score that they score in their test. Next, please, Rachel. So if they get all 10 badges out of 10, they get an A+. 9 out of 10, they get an A, 8 B. So it's a very straightforward system. About coins, these are the side quests, and these are my practice assignments. So the data crunching and the zombie waves that you see there, those are practice assignments, right? They learn about a statistical concept. I have tutorial videos. This is how you calculate these numbers. These are the buttons you click in SPSS to run this analysis. Now go practice. And so if they complete the practice and they each have 3 chances for the practice, then they get coins. They can also find coin stashes hidden around the class. So occasionally I would have like, here is the claim code to get 10 coins, or here's 20 coins. If they are 10 office hours, they get coins. If they are the first person to buy items in my shop, they get bonus points, things like that. So it's just a little bonus rewards that you can give out to students to get them motivated. And I didn't think that it would account too much, but my type A students loved this coin system. Like they were determined to go out and hit all of the coin stashes in the class. And then in the end, if they get 1,000 coins, they get a badge, right? And the total they can get, I think, is about 2,000. So these are the side quest instruction. I have this kind of instruction up front, and how many attempts they have, time limit, difficulty, how long it's going to take, just to have everything very clear and eliminate any questions the students have. For the discussions, again, like these are the ways that they can interact with their classmates, right? So because it's a stat class, all the discussion topics are stats related. But if they complete half of these discussions, they get their discussion badge. And then the boss battles are really fun. These are also practice badges, practice quest, but I use real world data sets. So for example, like a survey of Twitter usage, people's attitude towards science and AI, how countries are handling coronavirus pandemic, things like that. So these are real world practice data set that they can work on, and I allow them to collaborate with each other. So they can talk, they can teach each other, they can tutor each other however they want to. The only thing that I really said not to do is to give out the straight answer. So you can't cheat by just telling the answer, but you can help each other. And the students really, really love this. It feels like, you know, they're defeating a boss, right, by working together. And then there's a collective reward. So if the class average is 80% or above, everyone earn an extra item. And the items are cool. I'll explain next. But because all of these elements, there are a lot, right? So students can get confused. And to help that, I give them a schedule and a timeline. So if you, want to know what is due when, follow this schedule. And on the actual LMS, I would also have the hyperlink directly into this table. So say if they want to do a quest, they just click on the link. And this is the thing that I encourage students to print out so that they have a copy and they know exactly what to do. To help students communicate, I also use Discord. So this is a totally add-on. My main LMS is Canvas. I think the discussion board and the messaging system in Canvas is terrible, just because it's not very dynamic, right? You get a notification and then you reply in your email, and then there's like this weirdly formatted thing, right? And as we know, like Gen Z don't use those kind of ways of communication. So Discord is more fun. It's actually a platform started for gamers, and I used it when I was doing my own gaming, but I fell in love with the tool. It has chat, it has voice, it has bots that can help with a lot of functions, as I will show you later. So I had a page set up for the class, and it's on Discord, and students can create accounts. They're free, of course, and ask questions. If they ask me a question and tag me on there, I answer them within seconds. And so that really helped ease the fear that students have, like, how can I get help, right? If I have a question, what do I do? Or how do I get a hold of my instructor, which is a big issue in online classes, especially asynchronous. So the fast response speed is really helpful for them. And it actually doesn't bother me too much because I use Discord extensively for my work anyway. So it's just always on, and I get a ping, and it's usually just take a few seconds to respond to a student. But the more fun thing about Discord is that students can actually execute the buy and the use items commands on Discord. So what you see here is the item shop that I have on Canvas on the right, and then my item shop on Discord on the left. And they are pretty much the same content. I mean, the Canvas version is obviously more fancy and colorful. But the students will actually like type in the commands to buy stuff here. And so this is a great way for those of us who want to kind of take it up a level, but we don't have like a game designer to kind of design a game platform for us, right? So Discord and all the bots do that for you. And the bot I use here is called Unbelievable. I'm happy to share that later, but it's just super easy to set up, and you get all of the kind of elements of the game that you don't have to program. So quick and dirty trick, but it worked really well. And what's also cool about it is that after my students finish their tutorial, they get a starter pack, right? So if you play a game, like, you know that the game gives you something to start out with. You don't start out empty-handed, right? So my students also get some items, and I tell them, hey, go to the item shop, look it up to see what these items can do for you. So here, for example, like the torch gives them a correct answer to a question. The hourglass waive a late submission. So if they submit something late, they can just use this, and the late goes away. The potion adds score to their batch test, so they can actually add to the test score. Next is the portal possibility. They can redo the test. So the test has 1 attempt, but if you use the portal, you can do it a second time. And then the seeker scroll, like they can ask me for a hint on any questions. So sometimes they are just, they get the thing, they get the content, but they just need a little reassurance or clarification, or like, a hint, just get them, give them a little push. And that's what the seeker scroll did. So all of these items, I think they are all built to kind of help students to get into like the playful mindset, right? And the test is not the only thing that determines your score. So students are usually stressed out in the beginning, and then they started accumulating coins and they get rich, right? And I tell them like, hey, go buy items because those coins are for nothing at the end. And then of course they can always check their stats, how much coins, how much money they have, and how many items they have in their possession, in their inventory. And again, this is what the bot does. So this is the name of the bot. If anyone wants to write it down, Unbelievable. It's free to use as well. So none of this costs anything to me or the student, except of course the textbook. So to wrap it up, as you can see, like I've designed this class in a gamified way, but completely following the Kolb's experiential learning model, right? All of the 4 learning modes are there: feeling, reflecting, thinking, and experimenting. So the students actually are going through experiential learning cycles every day without even realizing it. And all the elements of the game, items, quest, stats, avatars. I also have a ranking board, right? Who earns the most badges, who have the most coins, things like that. They are just really fun. And it did take me about 2 to 3 weeks to kind of get students into this mindset that, hey, if you screw up on one test, that's fine because you can retake it, right? Or, if you don't understand anything, please ask me questions because that's how it's supposed to go. It takes me a while, a lot of kind of pushing, announcement, notification to get students into that spot. But after about 2 weeks, they started warming up to it. They take initiatives. They organize learning study meetings to defeat the bosses in the boss battles. They started to kind of strategically thinking, okay, well, how many coins do I have, and what items can I buy with it, and how is it gonna get me help me get an A? So out of all of my students so far taking and completing this class, about 85% get an A or an A+. And they didn't cry, and they learned statistics. And I can tell, like from the instructor side, right? I can tell that they actually learn the content. Like they are not just doing the minimal amount of work to get through it. Like I know they get it, right? And so I, as an instructor teaching stats, like I'm super happy. They are happy, I'm happy, everyone's happy. So yeah, I'm gonna let Rachel talk for a little bit about her student experience going through the class, and then we'll be happy to take questions before moving on to the reflection.
So one of the really cool things about Discord is that you can join a study room, and your whole screen is not necessarily taking up bandwidth, but people in your channel or in your class know that you're there. So if you're studying and somebody happens to hop on a Discord because they're also working on it, it's one of the few opportunities for camaraderie in an asynchronous virtual class that students have. And I value that. So one of the challenges of it being such a different class, even though it's refreshing by the midpoint, it's startling at the beginning because we are used to a certain format, we're used to a certain way, and these are master's students, right? And so in my personal experience, I finished my undergrad and I went straight on through to master's work because COVID made getting a job practically impossible. And so I just kept on with it. And so after so many years of Canvas, and you know, you click here and you click next and you click next and you click next, it was just very different. And so while yes, I would agree with Mai that there weren't necessarily tiers, statistics created an opportunity where I was like, I don't know if I really want to go to grad school. I would tell my friends, I don't want to be a grad student anymore. I changed my mind. And I think that that's the reality of your students, is there's emotional experience that you have nothing to do with. And your intentions might be 100% supportive, encouraging, but they show up with their own internal script and dialogue about, am I good enough? Can I do this? Am I ready? And you have to combat that. And what's really fun about the gamification is that there's this like distraction mechanism where you're like, oh, look over here, look, there's badges, you can redo it. And then you're like, oh yeah. And this is one of the first experiences that I had as a university student, that it didn't feel like school was a performance hall, but rather a gym where I could learn how and practice these concepts. And statistics is fraught with big words that you have never heard before and never used before. And it can be really terrifying. So gamification helps meet your students where they're at because of the reduced anxiety that they will never tell you about. They might not even tell themselves about it. And so it's a nice technological comfort blanket, security blanket.
Well, she loved it so much that she's doing this with me, and she's applying for a PhD program, hoping to do more of this.
Yes, yes.
Yes, so Alex has a question in the chat about when I start out, did I have the idea of the whole thing or maybe incorporate one or two elements to start? You will see in the chat that I just pasted the link again to the gamification checklist. And I think it's helpful to kind of go down the checklist. You don't have to do all of this at once. And in fact, I am in my third iteration of this class, and I keep kind of refining and improving it. I think I'm close to a final version, but definitely not completely done. So you can definitely start with a small thing, and like Louis shared at the beginning, right? Start with some badges and some kind of coins. He has experience point, but I have coins. You can have anything you want. So that students can kind of start accumulating that, right? And if you stop for a minute and think about it, gamification is kind of lurking into other parts of our lives as well. So for example, my university has a health impact program that basically, you know, if you do things that are healthy, then at the end of the year, they give you a cash incentive. And that's gamified, right? Because they based on like, you know, you do this, you walk 5,000 steps, you get X number of points. You reach this milestone, you get whatever, right? That's aspect of gamification too. And so, you know, you can start anywhere, small, and then once you realize that more things need to be added, you can just add them in.
I think I have kind of a similar, sorry, I'm just like asking more questions, but I think I have kind of a similar question to Diana, because I was thinking about the badges, like could be a different way of thinking about grades as well. So instead of like, oh, you only got a 75 on this, like you earn the badge rather than like taking points away. So what if they, in their attempts that they have to take the test X amount of times, they still like they don't get 100? Like what happens to the badge?
Yeah, so to get the badge, I only require a 90 out of 100. Some students suggested lowering that to 85. I'm like, nah. And the reason why is, so first of all, to answer Diana's question real quick, I have a fixed portion of the test and then a flexible portion of the test. And what that means is there are 20 questions on each test. The first 5 are the same for everyone. And then the other 15 are drawn randomly from a test bank. So the test does change even if you retake it. But after the student take the test and say it doesn't do so well, in my feedback to them, I would say, well, in question 2, you need to do this. In question 5, you need to do this. I tell them where it goes wrong and what they need to do to kind of fix it. And of course, I offer the opportunity to say, do you want to meet to discuss this? Or do you want me to explain anything? So that's where the learning actually happens, right? When students fail something and they go ask me, well, I was thinking this, but was I wrong? Like, what was I supposed to do? And then I would tell them what to do, right? I think that's totally legit as a job of an instructor. Like, we are teaching them the right thing to do. However, I think the traditional system does not build those opportunities in enough. And so our students kind of forgot that they can ask for the correct answer, or they can ask for like, okay, well, how do I do that, right? So I try to encourage them to keep asking questions, and I offer tips and I offer help, because to me, that's really where the teaching happens. That's my only teaching moments, given that I pre-built this class, so everything is already ready to go in the beginning. And if I want to, I can not touch it and the course will run on its own, right? But that's my teaching moment. I was like, hey, do this.
I was going to add on to that just a tad bit. And Mai, you do have a good question about administration for your grade. So I would just offer that if Noel's principles of andragogy are accurate and to be relied upon, one of his principles is that adults are problem-centric learners. And I will tell you, as an A-type grad student, few opportunities for my undivided fixation is when I think that you're going to tell me how I can get the answer right. And I'm not proud of how grade grubby I am, but it's the system that we have been in, and it's the system that we have operated in. And to be totally honest, if you've made it into grad school, you've been on some level moderately at least successful in an undergraduate system, which valued grades, which valued points. And so when you have your students literally on your seats, and how many research articles have we all read about how to drive student engagement? And let me tell you, they're engaged when they think that you are going to give them specific feedback about how to improve their test scores.
Yep. Yeah, that has been my experience too in other classes, right? Students care more about how to get better grades than how to improve their work. And oddly enough, those two are not the same. But yeah, so to answer the question about administrator by Jason, I have not. And fortunately for me, my department is very supportive of this idea. I, of course, did get their approval before I start out. So we had a weird system in which you need to get an explicit approval to be able to use the badges in Canvas. So I did went through this with them, tell them what I plan to do. They think it's a great idea. They may even like implement this program-wise. So having a badge system for other classes as well, though that's not to the extent that I used in my class. And we also don't have a curve, like we don't grade on a curve, like only so many students can get A's, so I kind of get away with it. And I mean, to be honest, like these students earn their A's fair and square, right? Because they play the game, I set the rules, they follow the rules, and they earn their grades. So it's not like I help them cheat or anything, right? That like everything that they do, including buying their potion to boost their test score, was allowed within the game. And if anyone asks me, I can defend my philosophy for that. It's like, if you practice enough, then I think you should earn some credit for your actual test. Some people practice a lot and learn their materials, but just don't perform well in tests. And that's a way to not get them penalized. So yeah, I was very fortunate with my administrators, but I also encourage you to make sure to check with yours and get their approval and blessing first. It's gonna save a lot of issues. Is there any more questions before we move on to the next portion? Okay, so Rachel, please take it away.
All right, so we're going to give you an opportunity here to think about what these game concepts and elements could do for your class. And so we're going to give you a reflection time, about 5 minutes. I'm going to play some epic music to get those juices flowing for you to be creative and to think about how an overall theme. And these bullet points are from the Appendix A, which are in the link. Mai's put the link in there a couple of times if you want to have more specific instruction. But since we've already talked about it, I just left those as kind of a jog your memory about what the past few minutes have been, what the past few minutes have shared with you. So we're going to give us about 5 minutes to think, and then we will be broken up into breakout rooms where you'll be able to discuss with your colleagues how it could be, how it could change one of the courses that you already teach.
Welcome back. I didn't know why it put you in a room too.
But I honored it, and I was like, all right, hey, let's talk. Tell me if you can hear if I turn on this fan, like in my earbuds.
A little bit. Hi, Sarah. Hi, Stormy.
Hello.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a fun time with your discussion. So, Rachel, do you want to share a screen again? And could we please hear from a couple of you? What kind of ideas have you come up with? And what gets you excited?
I can go. I think I was sharing with Louis and I was like, I'm going to create Mario game in my class. Everybody loves, whether it's international or US, everybody loves Mario.
Mm-hmm.
I might start, and he gave me a really good suggestion. I might start with a small module, which is manageable, and then I can move on creating the whole class.
Sure. You mind sharing what that one manageable piece is?
Well, the core goal is save the princess, right? So I think I can create 2 exams where you catch up all your assignments and homework assignments to collect the coin to save the princess.
Nice.
So my 2 exams can be saving the princess.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Nice. So you have 2 princesses to save.
Yes, princess 1 and 2.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to share?
So,
I can go if
Jen.
time. Is there time?
Yeah.
Yeah, we interestingly, we had a librarian in our group, and whilst we had different ideas, different topics, we thought that a library game would be really, really useful, particularly at the start of an academic year. And we decided it was quite scary going into a university library for the first time, also acknowledging a lot more is online. But so searching for text, searching for journals, ranking the credibility and authenticity of articles. You know, a general website would be much lower than a journal from a recognized academic source, textbook in between, and also then how to reference the articles or the documents that the student has sourced. It could become quite complex, and then application in an assignment. And we thought that was, you know, really, really good foundation for using this type of approach at the start of a student's higher education program.
I love that idea. I love that idea. And that reminds me of 2 other ways that I've seen games used in a librarian context. The first one is scavenger. So one of the people who posted about gamification on Canvas, Daniel Child, I think it was his name, because the post has since been deleted. But he used a scavenger kind of game, send his students around campus into libraries to find things. And then of course they go back with a lot of the things that you mentioned, right? How to find books, where are the periodicals and things like that. A second approach I've seen my local library done after the COVID-19 lockdown, and they created, using Google Forms, they created a virtual escape game experience. And what that means is that, you get presented with a kind of a picture and then a kind of a script, a storyline, and then there's a puzzle you need to solve to move on, but they are all kind of library related themes. So, I mean, that would be great additions to a course as well.
And it can be applied to any topic.
Exactly. Yes. Yes, definitely.
Any subject.
Thank you. Thank you. Stormy, you want to go ahead?
Sure. So I taught an undergraduate leadership class this last year that has a very big self-reflection component. And I was just thinking it could be framed as a journey of self-discovery where you earn badges along the way of self-awareness, other awareness, interpersonal awareness when they work in teams, and they earn badges for each of these aspects of developing their leadership acumen and their social emotional competencies throughout the course. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. And if you want to spice it up, like you can use the hero's journey to kind of craft a script, right? That would be fun.
Yeah.
Chantal?
Hi. Yeah, so I was thinking I have a business abroad class that goes abroad for spring break, and there's stuff we do before and after. And so before they could earn, right, like our welcome dinner, or we're supposed to be going to Amsterdam, so like going to the Heineken experience. And so if they complete certain tasks, they can earn points in different ways to be able to go. And then afterwards, right, like use those things to then build up their grade.
Yeah, definitely.
Online version of the gamification, and then we'd be all on an adventure together in Amsterdam.
Right. Yeah. So what I love about these kind of things is that once you get yourself in that mindset, right, the possibilities are really limitless. And you can apply it in any kind of class, in person, hybrid, online, any level really. Children's K-12 classes, right, use this all the time. And as I've shown my master's students, I think the average age is about 34. I have of my students, they enjoy it. So it's not that kind of, it's not a too weird of an idea to introduce to your students, right? And I think the flexibility and the fun of it is going to really help us engage our students, especially when we are at a distance from them and when we can't be together in person in a room, right? And another thing about these kind of gamification is that, it's kind of the future, right? The technology is here, might as well use them to our advantage, right? And all you really need to do is a system that kind of keep tracks of the points and the activities. And of course the LMS can do that. And something like Discord and the bot that I just shared can do that as well.
Do you use the free version of Discord, or do you pay for an upgraded version of it?
I use the free version. Yeah, so basically everything in this class that you've seen are free to me and free to the students, of course, except the textbook. And Diana would like to see a version of Canvas. Yes, I can, but I'm not sure how, I guess how to effectively help you navigate through the site. If you want to look back at the slides, like all the elements of the game, that's pretty much how I get it set up. And then I'm happy to chat offline in a private time if you want to. Do we have any other lingering questions before moving on to educator roles? Okay, so let's move on, and then I believe we'll still have time for questions at the end. So this educator role is again based on the Kolb educator role profile built on his experiential learning theory, right? And it basically posits that there are 4 types of educator role utilizing the different learning modes. And that is the coach, the facilitator, the subject expert, and the evaluator. Each played a very important role in educating our students. So the key in the theory in ELT is that an educator needs to be able to dynamically switch roles, meaning to adopt 2 or more roles in an education process. You should not be just, say, like a subject expert or an evaluator, because that would limit the effectiveness of your teaching, right? And so as I've kind of demonstrated throughout this presentation, that the educator roles are indeed dynamic and are utilized fully in this kind of gamification, right? So of course, coming into class, such a technical subject as statistics, I am the subject matter expert. I am teaching them the materials. So I provide the content knowledge. I select which book chapter they are reading, which assignments they're doing. I'm creating the test, building like recording lecture videos, recording tutorial videos that they can follow and things like that. All of that elements are there, and as in any other class, right? Of course, I'm also the evaluator. I grade and I give feedback and I help them achieve the learning goals that the class is supposed to help them to overcome. But most importantly, I see my role also as a coach and a facilitator. Facilitator in the sense of motivating and encouraging them to kind of, just keep at it. Sometimes, especially after some early failures, if the students kind of bombed the first test, they get really discouraged, right? And so it's then my job to say like, hey, it's not over, right? This class is really designed with a bunch of safety mechanisms to catch you if you fail, and it's not the end of the world. I also help students connect with one another, because in my experience, they really enjoy the peer-to-peer interaction in addition to the interaction with me. And the more peer-to-peer interaction they have, the happier they seem to be, and the more they actually learn, especially with that cooperative aspect of the boss battle that I've built in the class. Right? So I encourage them, I say like, hey, your classmates are having a study session at this time. If you want to join them, like, go on Discord, right? And also coaching them through this process, because I mean, at the end of the day, I am an educator. I'm passionate about experiential learning, and I want to teach my students to learn how to learn, right? Even outside of this course, after you're done with me, right? But when you're in a learning situation that require you to learn, which we are faced with every day, and even if that is a subject that you would dread, right? How do you overcome that fear? And how do you gather your best self so that you can learn effectively in that situation? And so that is totally beyond the scope of the class. But to me, that's kind of like the most important thing that I want to teach my students, right? If they ever take anything away from this class, I want them to know that, hey, the fear is just psychological. Sometimes we make it to be bigger than the fear itself. And hey, you can do it. You got through stats with no tears. You can face anything, really. So I really help them with the gameplay, with the mindset, with their learning approaches, how to utilize their time and their coins and other things like that, right? So I model to them the developmental behavior that I share a little bit at the beginning of this session, that mistakes are totally acceptable and even helpful if you can learn from them, right? That you are not alone is okay, and encouraged to ask for help, right? And I think that's kind of the same story that that is reality, right? Even as scholars, for example, right? When we run our own statistical analysis, it doesn't work. So what do we do? Like we go out and ask people who know how to do it, and please tell me, how do I do this? We seek help. We don't get just stuck there and say like, oh my gosh, I'm failing this thing, right? We move on. And so I think that is just above and beyond the most important skill that I want to leave my students with. And overall, it has been a very rewarding experience for me. As I said, it did take a lot of effort to kind of set up the whole thing, making sure there's no glitches and constantly kind of making improvement to the class. But once it's done, is really just a breeze because all the content materials are already there. I only need to answer clarification questions, grade the tests, which are mostly auto-graded anyway, clarify any misunderstanding my students may have, keep track of the points, which I have the LMS system and Discord, the bot, keep track for me. So it's a lot of little things, but nothing really overwhelming that I have to do when the course is already running. That is why I said up front at the beginning of this presentation that it may look overwhelming right now. It may look like a lot of work for an educator to do, but kind of once you put in that upfront investment, after that, it is just really easy to teach, right? And if you think about like, okay, well, I'll be teaching this course for years to come, then that upfront investment is totally worth it because it's just one time you put a lot of work into it. And then after that, it's just kind of run automatically. So what we would like you to do next is to have a few minutes again into your and kind of reflect on how you'll approach this kind of design from an educator standpoint. And before Rachel talks more about instructions on that, I'm going to share just a few kind of tips that I share with my students to succeed in the class, the do's and the don'ts. And I include all of this in the tutorial videos. I also kind of refer them back to the tutorial videos during the class if I feel like they need a reminder. But basically all the things I said, do your work, but be smart about it and seek help. And there are also a list of don'ts, right? That's in the next slide. Think differently. This is a game. This is not a hard class. And don't do it by yourself. Just use everything kind of available to you to approach this class. So Rachel, do you want to take it away?
Sorry, Rachel, you are muted.
I love technology. I'm really excited about it. Thank you guys so much for watching me say this again. We're going to give you about 2 minutes to reflect on this, and then we're going to break out into breakout rooms again, where you guys can kind of discuss how you could dynamically shift, right, from an educator, or I like to examine myself as how do I be a cheerleader, but also the guide rails, and each flavor of Kolb's educator role has an appropriate application. How are you going to do that? What does that mean to you? What does that mean in your classes? What does that mean with your students? 2 minutes.
Hi, welcome back. Would you like to share with us what you talked about in the breakout room?
I can go.
Great.
Well, we were 3 doctoral institute attendees, so we were in our DBA programs. Although I taught some classes and even Stormy taught some classes, so we had some experience, but we were just sharing that we definitely like the idea of getting educated with all these things to keep in mind, so that when we next time apply this, we just have the idea about it. So right now we are grasping everything, and then the time will come when we'll actually implement it.
Definitely, yes, yes. Does anyone else want to share a quick thought about educator roles?
Well, something that we commented in our group was that when you are designing a new course, it's a great idea to do it from this perspective, because it may be a little bit more difficult to adapt something you have to something with this methodology than to create this new way of grading or displaying all the activities. So if you are designing something new for the next semester, I would recommend try it. I think it's you are generating something new for the starter, so you can try to do it with this methodology.
That's a great point, and I totally agree. I think designing something from scratch is a lot easier than adapting and modifying a course that someone else already developed, right? And then there may be other administrative hoops that you need to jump through in that case too. So this brings us to the end of our PDW today. We are open to any final comments and questions if you want to. Please ask away. This is a completely open forum.
I just want to thank you and say how impressed I am with this. When I saw gamification, I thought we were going to maybe talk about, you know, like very tiny ways you can add an element to like your class for an hour one day. And so seeing this much more comprehensive was fascinating and exciting to me.
Thank you for attending. I hope you take away something cool, and please feel free to reach out after the conference if you have any questions.
If you go to the menu buttons and click on each of the things, what happens then? Do they go like to a game, or is it like I don't know, the syllabus or a video? I don't know.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so they each of those buttons will take them to a page on the class and in the class. And so if they, for example, click on the timeline button, then they will be taken to that schedule and timeline slide that you see there. And then if they click on discussions, then they won't be taken to the list of discussions. If they go to like Tavern, then they won't be taken to Discord. So pretty much, you know, for Canvas specifically, and Blackboard too, actually, there is a navigation menu on the left. And usually there's a list of modules and assignments and discussions and things like that. So I still have that if some students want to use the traditional way, but the menu button should be their main way to navigate around the course. So, and the way to make these are super easy. You just kind of, you know, put a picture, put some text. These are in PowerPoint. You export the PowerPoint slide as a picture, you put them in a table. And this is what you see on this page here. It really is a table, right? A 3x3 table. And then you embed a course link into each of the picture. And that's it.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, please. Arpita. You're muted.
Sorry, I was just saying I'm leaving. Thank you so much for a great session.
Thank you for attending. I'm so happy. Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
And I'm sorry again, just like was the case with Gabriella. So when they click on a button, a badge, whatever, I'm sorry, I'm not using the proper terminology, I'm sure, but so they accomplish something, whether that's a discussion, a board, do you have to then manually grade it? Where does it go? Does it go, some of it is obviously auto-graded, but does it notify you as an instructor, or do you constantly have to check things? Like how does it, logistically, how does it work with the grading? Is what I'm asking.
Okay, so grading discussions, yes, I do have to manually grade them, but I mean, I give them all 4 points anyway, right. Because it's not really something that is like, I don't punish them for technicalities, right? They're still learning, and most of them actually have it correct, right? So if there's anything, I give feedback in the discussion, just like a regular discussion, right? But again, all of my tasks are pretty low key to grade. So the grading itself is really fast. With things like discussions, I grade them once a week, once kind of everything is in, maybe more if I have the time to. But the grading themselves are not taxing at all. And it depends on what kind of course you want to build and how much you want to interact with your students, right? There are ways to, of course, make it just completely auto-graded. So for example, in one of my other course, I use the Perusal as a tool for discussion. And so discussion on that platform is auto-graded. I don't have to do anything.
And do you activate everything from the get-go, or some things are activated later depending on how, particularly for your class, depending on how the flow goes? I guess, yeah, do you activate everything right away from the beginning, or as the class proceeds?
For this particular class, I activated everything in the beginning, just so the students can have kind of an overview picture of where things stand. Also, I have a mix of hard and soft deadlines. And by that, I mean, there are certain assignments that are due on a particular date, and that's the last day of the module, right? But there are a lot of other assignments, including the bash test, that students can complete at any time before the course is over. And my students very much appreciate that, because there is still kind of a sense of progress. They're moving along, but at the same time, like if they have life events coming up preventing them to do the bash test before the end of the module, then they know they have that flexibility too.
Good. Wow. Any disappointments, personal, when it comes to design or how it ran, something we can learn from?
Well, from personal experience, is because everything is in a system, right? So you see the way that I link things to each other. So one caveat is that once you change something, you have to change it everywhere. And so this is where I find the function on Canvas that to check for dead links to be super helpful. Because I would change something to a new version and then forgot that it's linked in 10 other pages, and then Canvas tell me there are 10 dead links. I'm like, oops. So that is one thing. And then one caveat about students who, some students take online classes and online programs because they don't want to interact with anyone. And so when you run into those students, they will be, a little challenging. If I was like, you're obviously failing the test, you're not listening to my feedback, you refuse to talk to me, you will not talk to your classmates, like, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can't help you.
Each of us have one such student. I get it. Yeah.
But I was commenting in one of my teams that for me it has been the more relaxed part, because it's so transparent, because they have all the information that it's very hard to argue something different. It's not the subjectivity is very, very small, and they have many information and feedback along the course, that at the end they get what they worked for. So for me, it has been like the final part of the course is very transparent, and it's more like a celebration, because I give them diplomas and the badges, things like that, that they are more happy to close the course, and it's not this bittersweet feeling that you get a bad grade. No, you got what you worked for.
I totally agree with that, because the way I set it up too, like, they can earn up to 2,000 coins. They only need 1,000, right? So they really only need half of that, right? The battle points too is cumulative. So say you score 50 out of 100 this week. Okay, well, that's too bad on an individual basis. But hey, it's accumulative. You only need 300 total. So it doesn't matter if you score 50 or 10. you can make it up next time, right? So if you keep working hard, you can eventually earn the grade that you want. I totally agree with that, Louis. And thank you so much again for sharing your experience. I'm excited to know that, you know, someone's already doing the things like that out there, and I'm happy to hear about your success as well.
No, it was very inspiring, May. You had done a beautiful work, and it has been a great session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
our time is up. So if you have any final questions, please ask them. Otherwise, thank you so much for coming. And I look forward to connecting with you outside of the session.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Great seeing you, Gabriella, too.
Yeah, great seeing you.
Where are you now? Oops, she's gone. We are done. I think we can close this out. Do you want to save the chat, or do you want to?
I don't know that I know how to do that, and I don't know that we need to, because it was like. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent job, Mai. It's a pleasure to watch you share, as always. It sounds like you really inspired some educators today. Nice job.
Thank you. No, you did great too. And sorry, I put you on the spot there, but you can handle it.
Yeah, moms. Yeah. All right. Well, you have a wonderful afternoon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.